evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to the ones in Asia and in Europe. Good afternoon to you in Latin America and in North America, Central America. Central is part of Latin America, of course. And well, good morning, Hawaii, I guess. We always have freedom lovers in Hawaii. My name is Jacek Spendel. I am president of Liberty International, and I have an extreme pleasure to host this special event on Venezuela, Venezuela's past, current situation, especially current situation, and hopefully brighter future. We do this event not as a part of any cycle of events, but when the important things for liberty happen around the world, we organize these kind of live shows or live interviews, live conversations. That was the case of the beginning of Russian invasion on Ukraine. We did 2 of them in 2022. We had one show on Bolivia, I remember, a few years ago. Now it's time for Venezuela, finally time for Venezuela. And I have a great pleasure to invite to conduct a conversation here with a distinguished person, also my friend, José Cordeiro. José Cordeiro is member of the board of Liberty International, but he's also an engineer. He's originally from Venezuela, that matters a lot. Based in Spain, in Madrid. You can see beautiful Madrid in his background. So Jose is an engineer, he's a futurist, that's very important. And he's an advocate of so-called radical life extension and longevity science. He is also libertarian. He's a true believer in human liberty. And you should know that besides being one of the members of the board of Liberty International, he's a co-founder of the so-called Millennium Project and serves as director of Millennium Project Venezuela node. Jose's work impact on exponential technologies such as artificial intelligence, biotechnology, nanotechnology, societal and human lifespan. Importantly, Jose is a co-author of The Death of Death, Muerte de la Muerte, which is a book, which is his bestseller book, examining the scientific, ethical, and policy implications of overcoming aging, right? Because freedom is one thing, but the other thing is to enjoy freedom. We want to enjoy freedom as long as possible, right? You can see his background, Muerte de la Muerte, Death of Death. Jose is author or co-author of many other books as well. Some of them about the money, some of them about the questions connected to liberty, but longevity and the question of immortality is something that keeps him busy in at least last decade or so. Anytime I talk to Jose, he's in different place. Okay, I said his base is in Madrid, but I think definitely more times we talk, and we talk at least once a month, usually twice a month. He was in, Dubai, Sao Paulo, Las Vegas, other places. He speaks often at conferences, including Liberty International World Conference. You want to see Jose live at our event? Make sure to come to Kathmandu, Nepal, the capital of Nepal. Liberty International is hosting another world conference there in August. Yeah, coming to Liberty International is our organization. I want to tell you very shortly about us, what we do, what we are. We are an organization dedicated to ideas of liberty, of course. And we are an organization that educates about liberty, creates networks, and we want to be as practical libertarians as possible. Our mission is finding and expanding freedom in an unfree world. So even though we are based in the United States, most of our work is outside of US. And as you can see, as you can judge by my name, I'm even myself not from US. I'm actually from Poland. I live in Poland. We have a team of almost 20 people from all over the world, 4 different continents, and we have multiple projects that have one mission: to promote liberty in as practical way as possible. So we are active in 3 spheres, we can say. First sphere is inspirational sphere. We have storytelling department. We produce animations. We produce books, and we want to basically make people love liberty. I know it may sound odd, but that's the case. We sometimes, to love something, you need somebody to make it attractive for you to love. So we want especially young people to fall in love in liberty, because having liberty in your heart is the key. It's not enough, of course, but it's the important, is necessary beginning. That's why the inspirational part. We have the empowerment part, super important, multiple projects, especially in the category of training. So we train new leaders for liberty. We have this flagship project called Project Arizona for young free liberty leaders. Project Arizona will celebrate its decade. Wow, it's amazing. Next year, it'll be Project Arizona number 10. We changed a bit the program. Now it'll be a fellowship that will last more than 6 months, mostly online, but also there will be this immersion in Phoenix, Arizona, and the rules change really in the positive way. So one of the things is that we will have up to 10 people doing fellowships for LI, and the fellows will not pay for it. We will pay you guys. So it's very competitive, and it's just fantastic program. I don't want to go to details. This is not about Project Arizona, but check it out. We have this world conference that we run since 1982, every year in different country. We learn about the beauty of liberty and the works in the liberty sphere all across the globe. Last year, fantastic gathering in Buenos Aires, Viva Libertad Carajo, of course, with President Milei. Actually, José is a personal friend and teacher of Javier Milei, president of Argentina, teacher from the past, about 25 years ago, and they keep a strong bond. We had Milei at our conference next year, Kathmandu, Nepal. Make sure to check it out, Liberty International World Conference. We have many other trainings, including online programs. And finally, empowerment sphere of our activities. So we want, maybe for a bit older people, but still it can be, anyone 30 plus. No maximum, of course. We want people all over the world. Does not matter the country, does not matter the income, does not matter color of skin, orientation, nothing. We want everyone to be able to grasp these fantastic opportunities today's globalized world offers to expand our individual liberties. Because the world is full of wars, taxes, bad stuff. But the same world is full of opportunities that were not possible to grasp even 20, 30, 40 years ago. And these are things connected to freedom, of course. Things like multiple residencies, passports, ability to work from one country, but for employer or business partners in other country, ability to pay lower taxes, etc., etc., digital nomadism. We are super excited about these things, and we teach these things. So you don't need to be super rich to learn different ways how to expand your personal liberty. Liberty International now is doing this. That's one of the important features of our organization. I am super proud, excited, and pumped, to be honest, to run it since 2019. But come back to Venezuela. Venezuela, the Bolivarian Republic, or in the future, maybe different official name, is going through changes finally. This is something that generations, I would say now, not only one, was waiting for, at least vast majority of people. But why we are even talking about these changes? What happened in this beautiful and once very prosperous country? I want to ask this bigger question first. Later it'll be shorter questions, but the first question Jose asked me, it'll be a little bit bigger context, a larger question, like what happened that Venezuela embraced socialism and why it failed so badly, why we are even here right now, looking at the country that is trying to reconstruct, trying to recalibrate after, wow, 27 years right now. I think 1998 was when 28 years of socialism in action, socialism of 21st century. Jose, please open the floor and tell us how it started and how it unfolded.
Yes, hello, Jacek, and all the friends from Liberty International and beyond, because our goal indeed is to push for liberty everywhere in the planet. And as my dear friend Javier Milei says, ¡Viva la libertad, carajo! And as I also like to say, and all Venezuelans, we say, ¡Viva Venezuela libre! Free Venezuela, right? Okay, a little bit of the background. Venezuela has been a country always pushing for liberty in its history. In fact, Venezuela is the country of Simon Bolivar, who liberated half of South America. And the ideas of freedom came from the French Revolution, the American Revolution, and were very important in the history of Venezuela. And there was a lot of private enterprise. In fact, when oil was discovered in Venezuela at the beginning of the 20th century, in fact, at the end of the 19th century, oil was discovered, there were Venezuelan oil companies, private oil companies, and the country grew very, very rich thanks to private enterprise. So actually by 1950, Venezuela was the wealthiest country in Latin America. Venezuela was almost as wealthy as Texas, which is interesting because Texas is similar to Venezuela in many ways, about the same area, more or less. I'm talking round numbers, more or less same area, same population, and same production of petroleum. And they were equally rich because they had free private enterprise. But that changed. That changed when the oil industry was taken over by the government. It was this nationalization, which is not a nationalization. It was taken over by the government. But anyway, in the 1950s, 60s, Venezuela was very rich. And my parents went to Venezuela from Spain. Actually, my family is from Spain. That is why I'm living now in Madrid. My family left Spain when Spain was in a dictatorship. Spain in the 1950s, 60s, early 70s was poor and a dictatorship. But Venezuela was rich and a democracy. Venezuela was the wealthiest country and the freest country and the most democratic country in Latin America. That's why many people from Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Latin America, Colombia, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, went to Venezuela because Venezuela was the land of opportunity, a rich, prosperous, democratic country. And sadly now, just to go back to the context, how fast things can change. Since I was born in Venezuela, Venezuela went from being rich and democratic to being the poorest country in South America, the poorest in South America. And then obviously there are the islands. Haiti is also very poor, but it's not South America, it's in the Caribbean. And Cuba, very poor places as well, and kind of authoritarian regimes as well. In any event, so Venezuela went from being very rich and democratic to very poor and authoritarian. And Spain actually advanced from being a poor dictatorship to being a relatively open country with democracy. And that has happened in my lifetime. So I know that these changes can happen very quickly because I have lived it myself. So the first part of the problem in Venezuela was when the government took over the petroleum industry in 1976. That was the beginning of the decline of Venezuela, when the government took over the petroleum industry. expropriating not only Shell, Exxon, Mobil, they also expropriated Venezuelan companies. I mean, private Venezuelans, they had oil companies in Venezuela. Those were also taken over by the government. And you know, the government doesn't know how to run a company, or they do, but for themselves. Huh? So anyway, that was the beginning of the decline. Also, the currency was taken over by the government. The Bolivar was the strongest currency in South America, and it was backed in gold and silver, also until the 1970s, and it was issued privately. There were 6 banks in Venezuela that issued currency fully backed in gold and silver. But then again, in the 70s, the government took over the gold, the silver, and began issuing currencies, centralized issuing the new Bolivar. And that was the beginning of the decline. I actually talk about that in my book, La Segunda Muerte de Bolívar, which means the second death of Bolivar. The first death of Bolivar was the death of Simon Bolivar, the independence leader. The second death is when the government took the private currency and began producing it without any backing in gold and silver. That is the second death. And that was the beginning of the end. And then Chavez, Hugo Chavez, he won in 1998. And he was the biggest disaster. Just to tell you what happened in that time since he won in 1998, the currency, the Bolivar, the name of the currency, has been taken out 14 zeros, 14 zeros, and it was changed 3 times. There were 3 renominations. In 2008, the currency was changed from Bolivar to a strong Bolivar. We wonder why a strong Bolivar, because it was weaker, and 3 zeros were taken out, 3 zeros. Then in 2018, 5 zeros were taken out, and the name of the currency was changed from a strong Bolivar to sovereign Bolivar. But it was even worse, even worse. And then in 2021, 6 zeros were taken out, 6 zeros, and the currency was changed the digital Bolivar, digital Bolivar. Venezuela had the first digital hyperinflation in the world, in history. It was digital because the Bolivar was called the digital Bolivar. There was no time to print money. It was all digital money. And so it was called the digital Bolivar. And in the year 2019, Venezuela had over 10 million% hyperinflation. 10 million% hyperinflation, a disaster, a disaster. So a complete disaster. Besides the total economic disaster, and the salary also went to $3. Now, the monthly salary in Venezuela is $3. It's incredible. That is the official salary. But 2 other crises that people need to understand. Venezuela has the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world. Depending on who you ask, it is between 8 and 9 million people have left the country. This is absolutely incredible. A third of the population has left the country. A third of the population. And there has been no war. Imagine, a third of the people have left the country and there is no war. But the GDP, you know, the gross domestic product has dropped 80% from the top to the bottom today, 80%. This is a war situation, a war situation. How can the economy collapse? 80% of the economy has, a third of the population has left. And actually, not only the 9 million people who have left, but hundreds of thousands of people have been killed, and have killed because there are no resources, like my own father. Here in Reasoning, I wrote the history about my father dying. Socialism killed my father. So it's a horrible situation. Hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans have died because of socialism in Venezuela. So it's the worst biggest humanitarian crisis. And Jacek, I know you are, and in Poland you have many people from Ukraine, but the Ukraine has been invaded. I can understand that you might have a few million Ukrainians, but they are running from a war. In Venezuela, there has been no war, no war. And we have twice as many refugees than Ukraine, even though Ukraine has twice the population of Venezuela. So the crisis in per capita terms is 4 times worse than in the Ukraine, with a big difference. Venezuelans have received $0, zero, while the European Union is pumping billions and billions of dollars to support the Ukraine, and Poland also, because receiving so many Ukrainian exiled people. Colombia has got nothing, and Colombia has now 3 million Venezuelans. Peru has 1.5 million Venezuelans. Ecuador, 1 million Venezuelans. Chile, 1 million Venezuelans. The USA, 1 million Venezuelans. Spain, 500,000 Venezuelans. Altogether, 9 million refugees. And not $1 official money from governments helping the Venezuelan crisis, which I repeat, is the biggest ever in the American continent, 9 million people. And in this century, in the 21st century, it is also the biggest humanitarian crisis. So horrible thing. Anyway, so now let's go for the good news and begin the questions. On January 3rd, the most incredible Hollywood operation happened. In 2 hours, the dictator of Venezuela was captured, even though he was protected by the top security equipment and personnel. He had a personal presidential bodyguard of 32 Cubans. This is also very horrible. The presidential guard was not Venezuelan, it was Cuban, because Cuba relies on Venezuelan money, on Venezuelan petroleum. So there were these helicopters with the Delta Force from the USA landing in Caracas. They destroyed all the radars, the Chinese radars. They destroyed the Russian missile system, and they captured the criminal dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, Celia Flores, in 2 hours. It's absolutely incredible. After destroying the radars and the missile force of the Venezuelan armed forces. So after that, Donald Trump announced that now he's going to run the country with Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State and whose family is Cuban. And they said there are 3 phases in this transition. Right now, during this period, is stabilization. That has been done by the Chavistas without Maduro. Maduro is in jail now in New York, but then the second in command, a woman, Delcy Rodriguez, she is running the show under US guidelines, which I think is good because they control the army still. So the transition has to be with them. So first phase, stabilization. Second phase, growth of the economy. And now, for the first time, they are going to open the petroleum sector. And Venezuela, by the way, has the biggest oil reserves in the planet. 300 million barrels of oil. Absolutely incredible. 300 billion barrels of oil is the biggest reserve, more than Saudi Arabia, more than Iraq, more than Iran, more than the United Arab Emirates. 300 billion barrels of oil. Anyway, third phase of the transition will be the real transition, changing the Chavista interim government for the new government of Venezuela that should be led by my friend Maria Corina Machado, who just got the Nobel Peace Prize. More good news, and this should happen hopefully within 1 year, all of this transition. But the good news is that Venezuela has sparked also the collapse of Cuba, because Cuba relied on Venezuela, and Venezuela is not giving them more oil, thanks to the USA. So Cuba will probably collapse also very soon. And then after them, Nicaragua, that also has a communist government. And outside Latin America, Iran. Iran had an incredible close connection to the Chavista Maduro government. In fact, there were flights, imagine, Caracas, Tehran. Incredible. These flights, and there were no tourists between Caracas and Tehran. Anyway, now there is this revolution growing up in Iran, and I am so excited. This year will be a fantastic year to be remembered. It will be an immortal year because I hope, and I cross my fingers, this is the end of totalitarian regimes in Venezuela, in Cuba, in Nicaragua, and in Iran. This will reshape world geopolitics. So anyway, those are my comments just to explain what is the current situation and what is happening now in the ground of Venezuela. Jacek.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jose. I like the chant, Viva Venezuela Libre. That's what we all want, because I believe we all freedom lovers, libertarians, classical liberals, free marketeers, we like the outcome. We like the hopeful outcome, of course. That will be discussed, I guess. The hopeful outcome, which is liberation of Venezuelan people, Venezuelan economy, and basically free society at the end. You said that there was no war against Venezuela, and despite that fact, so many people, 1/3 of the nation left, which is stunning. But I can say, of course, it's an irony maybe, that socialism is like staging war against your own nation, and the record of that people. I'm so sorry to hear that your father is one of them. Now he looking on us. He's probably keeping fingers crossed that things are finally changing. That is like a war, right? It's like a war, but people should know that finally. Socialism is not a game. Socialism is not just an idea or something. It's just a real threat for human lives. Yeah, Socialism Killed My Father, as the Reason magazine, great magazine, by the way, mentioned. Before my question, because I have a question, it'll be my only second and last question, because I want to open the floor. I want to tell everyone, and here we have really nice number of attendees, guys. It's more than 50 people. This is beautiful. For many countries, I see different names from different continents. I want to tell you, we are expecting your questions. Few of them will be asked, probably not all of them. You can ask them by clicking this 3 dots, more. And when you click more, there is Q&A. Ask. Some of you already do this. Great. More of you. I encourage more of you to ask questions there. We'll select best ones, and I will read them. I have our wonderful colleague Alba, who is, by the way, kudos to Alba. She's behind the technical aspects of this meeting and also promotion. Alba is communicating with me. I will be reading these questions, but now question from me. Jose, I need to say that as a libertarian, we libertarians, I believe we all love the outcome, hopeful outcome, as I mentioned. But the question of how it was done or how it is being done, it's questionable, because, you know, probably if a revolution happens in Venezuela and, you know, I don't know, people voluntarily donate money to Venezuelans, bitcoins or something, and Venezuelans get guns, and they do this, perhaps some other nations can support this movement. But if it grows from the bottom up, I believe there should be, except some crazies, and we have some crazies in libertarian movement, except some crazies, everybody will cheer like, yes, this is the way. But now this was the operation of a foreign government, operation that, you know, does not follow this rules of international law. I don't say that this is the most important factor, but since this is the operation of a foreign government, it raises some questions if this is the proper way. and not just about the proper way, but also raises questions if it does not, it can serve a good goal of liberation of Venezuela, but the wariness is that it may trigger some other authoritarian / totalitarian governments around the world. It may encourage them to take actions, much worse actions, because actions that are not about liberating a nation, actions that would basically mean enslavement of some nations. But when I hear Donald Trump, Marco Rubio to some degree as well, but I think this is just Trumpist way of talking. He talk more often about American interest, Western Hemisphere, the need of United States to control the hemisphere, and much less about Venezuelan people and it's their struggle for liberty. So even though I like the outcome and so on, but it raises some fears maybe. Hey, if he talks so much about Western Hemisphere being the sphere of influence from US, does not he legitimize authoritarian / totalitarian regimes like the one in Russia by Vladimir Putin, who says, hey, whatever was Soviet Union or satellite countries, that's my sphere of influence. That's my playground. I don't want any NATO here. I don't want any pro-Western influence. I don't want any guys who have different vision. Maybe China and Taiwan as well. Maybe other. Don't you fear that this kind of rhetoric can, kind of help the totalitarians of 21st century in their work? I know it's maybe harder for you as a Venezuelan, but that's my question. I should ask it as a libertarian because libertarians have this kind of questions. I'm not decided why or another. I see the picture is not black and white. What's your take on this, Jose?
Okay, yeah, great question. Absolutely. As a libertarian myself, I asked that question as well. But I am not 100% libertarian. This is the issue where I am not libertarian. Because how do you deal with the problem of evil? You cannot just go out and let it happen. You need to face evil. So in front of evil, I am not libertarian. I am more conservative. That we need to face evil. And if we cannot do it from the inside, we need to get help from the outside. So that's my position. But let me tell you, 99% of Venezuelans support what is happening. And I am 99% libertarian because in this issue of how to deal with evil, I am not truly libertarian. But I'm thinking also not just the Venezuelan situation. How about Hitler? When Hitler rose to power, we had to deal with the problem of evil. So it's not that, let's go out and find another place where we can be free. No, it's very complicated. Going back to the point of Trump actually also has to talk to his public. His public is the USA, the people who vote for him. So I do understand that he says, okay, we want to have oil. We want to have also no immigration and no drugs, because the problem of Venezuela has destabilized the whole of the Americas. This is an American problem for the whole continent. Why? Because of the refugees, the immigrants, 9 million people. I mean, this is incredible. Then drugs, because the Venezuelan government is a drug dealing government. It's a narco-terrorist state, not a narco-capitalist, a narco-terrorist government. And then also, obviously, then the petroleum issue. How can it be that Venezuela, with the biggest petroleum reserves, is producing nothing, almost nothing? Production of petroleum went 3.5 million barrels per day before Chavez, 3.5. Now it's less than one half, while the USA that has I don't know, very few reserves compared to Venezuela is producing 20 million barrels of oil. The USA now is the biggest producer of oil. The USA does not need Venezuelan oil. People say the USA needs it. No, actually, the USA exports oil. It is a different kind of oil because they export lighter oil, as it is called, lighter versus heavier. Venezuelan oil is heavier, which is actually bad. The USA exports good, lighter oil. But I don't want to get into the details. The fact is that the USA is an oil exporter, so they don't need Venezuelan oil. But he has to sell this to the public. He has to sell it to the companies, to the petroleum companies like Chevron. Chevron has never left Venezuela. They stayed producing, and they produce about a third of the petroleum in Venezuela today. And they announced they can increase 50% of production now. And not only Chevron, but also Repsol from Spain, Eni from Italy, and other companies are increasing 50% of production. Anyway, so Trump has to talk to his public. His public is the USA, and he has to tell them no more refugees. So he needs to stop the crisis, the refugee crisis from Venezuela. No more drugs, which is how it began, stopping drugs and sinking boats, taking drugs from Venezuela to the US, and stabilizing petroleum supplies for the world. And again, I don't like also Trump in many things because to me, he's like a mercantilist. He's a mercantilist, a conservative mind, but mercantilist. He needs that they have to export, not import, etc., etc. Without getting into details or the politics of the USA, he's certainly not libertarian, but he is helping a libertarian cause, and 99% of the Venezuelans support him. And we are thankful to Trump in this issue, no doubt.
Thank you, Jose. That's quite clear. I'm opening now questions from the audience. I get the first one from Rodolfo Milani. So Rodolfo asks, how do you think the transition has been handled so far? Does it bother you that most of Maduro's henchmen and accomplices are still in place?
Well, first of all, Rodolfo, thank you for connecting. Rodolfo was born in Argentina, but now lives in Miami, and he's a very good friend. So I'm happy to see you watching this. Of course, I don't like Delcy Rodriguez, that probably sold Maduro to the USA. This is the rumor that either Delcy or Maduro's wife, some people think that it was Celia Flores, the wife of Maduro, who sold him. Because how did the USA knew where he was sleeping? Because he sleeps every night in a different place, because he was afraid, Maduro was afraid to being caught. So he would sleep every night in a different place. But the USA knew where he was the night of January the 3rd. So there was some knowledge from inside, and it could have been his wife, because her children, her nephews are into drugs, and she doesn't want them to go back to jail, so she's maybe dealing with that. And Delcy, because Delcy Rodriguez, she wanted also to be president. So there was treason. There was certainly treason within the Chavistas, and I love that, because rats are killing rats. That's good. Now the second rat now is imagine this, it's so funny. He's the Minister of Interior Affairs, Justice, and Peace, a triple minister. And he has a reward of $25 million. His name is Diosdado Cabello. He is as bad or worse than Maduro. He has the second biggest reward. The biggest one was Maduro himself as president, $50 million. The second one, the minister, I repeat, Internal Affairs, Justice, and Peace. $25 million for him, Diosdado Cabello. And the third one is the Minister of Defense. He might also be the one with treason. No one really knows. But anyway, the Minister of Defense. His name is Vladimir Padrino Lopez. He got a reward, or his head has a reward of $15 million. All of these guys are criminals, drug dealers, assassins. Of course, I hate them all. They destroyed my country. They made 9 million people leave the country. So they are all horrible. But I do agree that we needed to have a transition, and the transition can be only done by the bad guys because they have the arms. So because there is no war, which is good, there is no war in this transition. It has to be handled by the people with the arms, and the people that have the arms are the Chavistas. So Delcy, I don't know if she got the $50 million for handing out Nicolas Maduro to the US government, or again, his wife, Celia Flores, or if they shared it, maybe they shared each one $25 million. Who knows? And maybe now they are planning to turn in the second worst guy, Diosdado Cabello. So let the rats kill themselves while the transition happens. So I had my doubts at the beginning. I did not like it because we had a recognized election approved by democratic governments in the world. Over 50 democratic governments recognized that Edmundo González Urrutia and Maria Corina Machado, who is my friend from decades ago, Maria Corina Machado, who has led the movement and who got the Nobel Peace Prize. She is the one who got the Nobel Peace Prize and who is very libertarian in her thinking. She's a freedom lover, very libertarian. Anyway, those are really the real leaders of Venezuela. The president elected, Edmundo Rodriguez, and of course, Maria Corina Machado as the vice president candidate. So they should be running the show, but they can't yet. They cannot because the arms are with the Chavistas. If she became
4 million, right? 4 million arms.
Yes, there are, very good that you were saying that. It is estimated that about 4 million Venezuelans are armed. They have guns, they have rifles, because Maduro said everybody should have an arm to defend from an US invasion. And you know, when you have 4 million people with guns, anything can happen, especially if it is with the bad guys. So this has to be peaceful, and the only people who could guarantee the peace is Delcy Rodriguez, because also she knows she has no reward by the US government. But if she fails, she dies. So I think it's very clear.
Talking about people with guns, we have an interesting question here from Tomasz Malinowski. Tomasz Malinowski, libertarian from Poland. Tomasz says, I have heard stories about pro-Maduro paramilitaries, the colectivos, who intimidate and even kill protesters and opposition figures. Can you share some details about this movement? How strong it is? How many people are there in colectivos? How much public support do they have? Is it 25% of population, 10, maybe 1?
Yes, the colectivos are these militia who have been armed with guns by the government. No one knows, but I'm saying about maybe 4 million people have guns. Many of those are no longer Chavistas because they see the disaster, the crisis, the hyperinflation, salaries of $3 per month. Horrible, horrible situation. People dying because there are no medicines in the hospitals, like my father. So anyway, there are not that many people who still support the government. Very few. In fact, in the elections, Maria Corina Machado, for the primary elections of the opposition, she got over 92% of the vote. And in the national election with the Chavistas, her candidate, Edmundo Rodriguez Urrutia, he got about 70% of the vote versus 30% for Maduro, even though he did not recognize those numbers. And that was still in 2024, the 28th of July. Since that time, the economy is collapsing even more. So they would win even with more votes. But again, the militia, they are dangerous. But also good news. I read that a couple of days ago, there are still CIA personnel, undercover personnel, U.S. Army personnel in Venezuela, and they used drones to kill one of these militia. And they were totally surprised because they used drones. They didn't expect to have these drones and kill one guy. This is fantastic because now the other um, uh, militia people, as they are called, they are now afraid that they can be killed by a drone. And drones are very easy and they can just go directly to you. They don't need to destroy anything else, only you. So I hope that the drones will scare enough the colectivos so that they turn down their arms and they don't kill people.
Thanks. We have a question from Basir Vrayet. Basir asks, Jose, can you please explain for our audience to grasp persecution of non-Chavez, independent, apolitical citizens are suffering by the Chavistas on the streets and government buildings?
Yeah, this is a very important issue. There are around 1,000 political prisoners. They began releasing these political prisoners on Monday, January 5th. On January 3rd, Saturday, Maduro was captured and taken into custody in New York. And then a couple of days later, Donald Trump said, let's free the political prisoners, these hostages. So we don't know because this is going still slowly because Trump says immediately, but they are playing their game. So maybe about 200 of these political prisoners have been released. But of course, the colectivos, the militia, are still intimidating some people. The USA also announced this past Monday that all U.S. citizens should leave Venezuela because the colectivos are going to target the U.S. citizens, the Americans. At the same time, however, now Delcy is becoming very sweet and she's collaborating. She even said that she's going to reopen the U.S. embassy in Venezuela, which was closed down by Maduro before the pandemic. Nicolas Maduro closed the U.S. embassy in 2019. And hopefully soon, the U.S. embassy will reopen in Caracas. This would be very important to have the U.S. embassy and to reestablish and have better relations between the USA and Venezuela so that the transition keeps on moving until Maria Corina Machado and her team can take over running the country.
Let's hope Maria Corina will take the power because she's the force of freedom. Bart Kamiński is actually an alumnus of Project Arizona, Polish man living in Ireland. He asked a question. Can you please relate to the statement that the US removed Maduro from power and attempts to manage the country to gain access to the local natural resources, mainly oil? If so, do you think it's a good deal for Venezuela?
Well, first of all, as I mentioned, Donald Trump has to justify this to the US citizens. I mean, he cannot just go invading a country without an excuse. So the excuse has been oil. And then maybe people talk about rare earth minerals. Venezuela has many rare earth minerals, besides lots of gold, diamonds, and many other minerals. But this is an excuse. The USA doesn't need that. As I mentioned, the USA today is an oil exporting country. It's not an oil importing, or it is partially because it imports heavy oil and then exports light oil, which is more expensive. So actually the USA is making a profit when they even import heavy oil like Venezuela. But anyway, he had to sell that to his public, to the USA. That is why Venezuelans, 99% of Venezuelans, we are so happy about this. Also, what was happening before? Before was really horrible. Venezuela was colonized by Cuba. This is the first time that a country lets a smaller country colonize itself. As I mentioned, the personal presidential bodyguards were all Cubans, 32 Cubans, incredible, not Venezuelans. And they were all eliminated in this chirurgical operation, all of them. And also, this is quite interesting, and I think we have to think about this. Cuba announced the names and the pictures of the bodyguards. Venezuela has not announced all the people who died from the Venezuelan army. Isn't this incredible? Even the Cubans recognize the people that have died from Cuba, but Venezuela, we don't know who were the military who died from Venezuela, except for a few cases. This is really interesting. The Venezuelan government still wants to hide many things. But again, going back to what happened before, Venezuela was giving the oil free to Cuba. Venezuela was giving the oil with an incredible discount to China. So Venezuela was losing money when it was producing petroleum. So now, actually, Venezuela will be able to sell petroleum at market prices, not free for the commies in Cuba, not at half price discounted to China, but now it will be sold at market prices. We believe in markets. We believe in freedom. So sell the petroleum at free market prices. This is what is happening now. So forget about this rhetoric about taking over the resources. That's not true. And I repeat, even if it were true, which is not, 99% of the Venezuelans are happy about what is happening now.
Thank you. Nodar Chinchaladze from Republic of Georgia. Nodar comes almost every year to our world conferences. Great man. He asked a question. 4 million gunmen is really too much, Jose. Whom they will support if anything happens?
Yes, again, this is horrible. And this is why the transition has to be careful. And that is why I think Mark Rubio and Donald Trump took the right decision. Even though all the Venezuelans want Maria Corina Machado to lead the country, now we understand it is not the time yet. It is not the time. We need to clean up the country. We need to have all these colectivos, all these militia to hand down their guns, like it happened when the drone killed one of these colectivo militia guys. They are going to learn by force if they don't learn by intelligence. But yes, with 4 million people, even if it is 1 million people with guns, even if it is 1,000 people with guns, and they begin firing, this is a disaster. That is why also the regular army, Venezuelan army, is getting ready during this transition period to stabilize the country so that the militia, which is a paramilitary group, don't get out of control. So we need to cross our fingers and go carefully so that they hand down their guns and that the army is still the Venezuelan army, even if Chavista, also the army is not really Chavista. It was only the generals. Those were Chavistas because they were getting lots of money. But the poor soldiers are suffering like everybody else. They are suffering. Their salary is not $3 because that's the minimum wage. They have a great salary. They have $20 per month, you know? What do you think you can do still with $20? Nothing. So they are suffering. They are suffering like everybody in Venezuela.
Especially the Venezuela is not cheap anymore. My good friend was in Venezuela last summer. He said it's more expensive than Poland and many parts of Europe. So I don't know how people can live with this little money.
Well, through Venezuelans in exile sending money inside the country. Now, actually, a lot of people use Bitcoin in Venezuela and other cryptocurrencies because it is not under government control. Oh, this is another thing. This is incredible. You know, now that Maduro was captured, it was found that he had 113 tons of solid gold in Swiss banks. 113 tons. Not only that, other assets are combined to be worth at this time $5.2 billion. $5.2 billion. And this is only the beginning of all the corruption that is being discovered. So horrible situation. But anyway, all this money will be brought back to Venezuela. It will help to be a more peaceful transition because, yeah, as you said, everything is very expensive because it is imported. And not only it is imported, but because there are very few channels to bring in things, there is no competition and prices are incredibly high, while salaries are incredibly low. So that is why poverty, I forgot to say, poverty now in Venezuela is 90%. 90% of people are in poverty. It's horrible, horrible.
Thank you. Jose, I have a last question because we need to slowly go to an end. Very interesting from Paul Epping. Paul asks, can it be that the United States of America uses Venezuelan oil to preserve its own? We have to be careful not to presume good behavior. There is no free lunch. Venezuela was suffering dramatically, but will the transition lead to democracy? How can non-democratic minds lead a transition to democracy?
Yeah, Paul Epping is also a friend from the Netherlands. Happy to see you here. And well, the transition really is not done by the Chavistas left in Venezuela. As President Donald Trump has said, he is really running Venezuela now. And that is what makes Venezuelans happy, that it is not run by the Chavistas. They are just there for this stage of the transition so that there is no war. We don't want to have a civil war. We don't want to have even the army killing each other. We don't want any of that. We want it to have it as peaceful as possible. And that can be done only by the Chavistas themselves. Because if Maria Corina Machado flew in, she might be killed, you know, by some of these people. So the transition, I think, is going okay. Well, talking about excuses of the USA keeping their oil, you know, I'm a futurist, and I see we will not be using oil in 20 years in the future. So actually, that is why we need to produce the Venezuelan oil as soon as possible, because in 20 years, we will be using renewable energy sources, mostly sun power, wind power, hydroelectric energy, and hopefully in 20 years also fusion nuclear energy. It's incredible. Now we have fission, dividing heavy elements, that's fission, nuclear, but now we are doing what the sun does, fusing atoms. And that is fusion nuclear energy, which is clean, by the way. The sun is very clean, and the sun is huge, and it sends 10,000 more times energy than we use in the planet. 10,000 more times more energy. So we don't need petroleum. We don't need the dinosaurs. As Sheikh Ahmed Yamani, one of the famous people from OPEC from Saudi Arabia, he said, the Stone Age ended, and not because of lack of stones. And he said by 2030, the oil age will end, and not because of lack of oil. And as I said, the USA also is producing a lot because they know they are not going to use their oil in 20 years. So no, that's not an excuse for the USA to keep their oil. I think they also see what is coming. But again, even if it were the case, we are happy that things are changing. This is in Venezuela. We are happy about that. And again, before our oil was given for free to the Cubans, at least now we are going to get some dollars. free market dollars. So I am happy about that too.
I said his last question, but I'll take this liberty to ask last question because the oil discussion triggered me a bit. In many countries, not just in Latin America, I hear it in Europe as well. I believe this is a common phenomenon. When there is discovered oil in a given country, lots of people believe that this is a strategic asset that should be in the hands of government because the proceedings, the profits should go to the people, as they say, to the people, right? They believe that if this is done by private players, private entities, then the greedy capitalists take money, maybe even take it away from the country. We only lose maybe environmental. We lose on the environmental side. We don't take anything out of it. So it's a question of nations' good luck to use these resources and so on and so forth. I know that Chavez used this argument a lot, saying like, we don't need these American greedy companies here. Now the Venezuelan nation will manage, will take profits, and so on and so forth. This notion is so popular. You don't need to be communist. You don't need to even call yourself socialist to believe in this. We see it in every country. But can we say, and this is a question to you, can we say that the disaster of oil industry, the fact that they don't refine oil anymore, that they have not invested, that you said, the prices, the discounts, and the Cuba, China, other countries, is this all this misery that the political management of oil in Venezuela brought? Does this, with all the problems it brought, does this also mean that many people now understand that public management is a failure and it's better to try private solutions in this area? I just want to see some little hope in this aspect as well.
Yes. Actually, I answered that question in my book, The Second Death of Bolivar. And I use the arguments of the father of modern economics, who is Adam Smith. Adam Smith, he said that there are proper and improper states. A proper state is a state where the citizens own the wealth of the country. When the citizens own the petroleum, own the silver, own the gold, own whatever, when it is the citizens, that's a proper state. And then it is improper when the state, the government takes over the resources, because then the state leaves from sucking those natural resources. And then they do anything they want with that money because the people don't feel that it is their own wealth. But in a proper state where the citizens own the resources, then they pay taxes. And when they pay taxes, they ask for results. As in the USA, sometimes people say no tax without representation. So if we need a small tax, also, I believe in minimum taxes, but if there is a tax, there must be representation. When the government takes over the resources, then the citizen doesn't feel that they are actually owning or even paying for that resource. So Adam Smith explained it very clearly in The Wealth of Nations. And he said another thing. He said, when a private or a private company goes bankrupt, it is the person that goes bankrupt or the company that goes bankrupt. But when it is the government, when it is the state that goes bankrupt, the whole country bankrupt. That is why the government should never control any private activity, nothing, as Adam Smith explained, because if the government fails, the whole country gets ruined. And if a company fails, that's the company or the individual, but the country keeps on going. So we need to keep very separate government from people, private individuals.
I like this line. This is a good line to end our conversation today. Thank you so much, José Cordeiro, for your insights, because there are many information that we cannot read in newspapers. We heard from you. This is a real value. Thank you so much. We keep our fingers crossed for the free Venezuela. We know it may take a little bit of time. Hopefully, it will happen sooner than later. That the people of freedom attitude, let's call it that way, will take power. But it's not about power. At the end, it's about making the future for Venezuelans better, to give them essential freedoms, to give them prosperity. This is the most important. How it will be done, well, we will see. You know, there's no one best strategy. The most important is what will be the outcome. And we keep fingers crossed for Venezuela Libre. We will discuss this topic in Kathmandu. I promised this to Jose, but I didn't need to make a big promises. This is actually good topic. We will discuss more than Venezuela. We'll discuss Latin American countries, how they stand up from socialism into freedom, libertad. You know, this is Nepal, this is Asia, but we'll have actually a number of speakers from Latin America. So please think about coming to Nepal, to Liberty International World Conference until end of February. We still have the early bird prices, and they're much lower than what will be later. The full ticket is 450, if I'm correct, US dollars, but it's a multi-day conference with nice meals and great networking, great minds. So think about it. Also,
and
if you enjoy this,
let me join in there, because Nepal is a fantastic place, and we are also going to have some tours. And as Jacek said, it's very cheap. The conference is incredibly cheap in a country. Of course, it might be a little bit expensive to fly to Nepal, but once you get there, you are close to heaven, to the Himalayas. And it's a beautiful place. So I am going to be there, and I will be talking about Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, Latin America, and also my new hobby, the death of death, how we are going to kill death with liberty, with freedom.
So we can say all of these topics are about bright future, right?
Yes.
And I want to also say, we have great partners. The main organization that helps us in putting this conference together, Language of Liberty Institute. Many of you know Glenn Kripe, some of you know Bishnu Timilsina. We work closely with them. We work also with other organizations in Nepal. This is the main one, though. If you like this seminar, this webinar, and if you like what we do, then I strongly encourage you to donate to Liberty International. If you are a citizen or a resident of the United States, these are tax deductible donations. We have status of 501c3, and everything we do is thanks to you guys, our donors. We don't accept any public funds from non-government. We only advance our mission with donations that come from your heart, because we believe in this kind of world of free people making free decisions without coercion, right? So thank you a lot to everyone who already donate. Those who don't, please think about it. And thank you so much for your attention. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Alba. And see you again at another Liberty International's event.